Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for another one of our evenings. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. Tonight, as I'm sure you're all aware, we're joined by Mark Carwardine. If you don't know him already, he is very well known in our industry for, well, a whole myriad of things. He's an author, broadcaster, writer, photographer, you name it, he's done it all. And it's a pleasure to have him with us. He's an old friend of Wildlife Worldwide, and it's a real pleasure to welcome him back with us. Today, Mark is going to be talking about bird photography in Hungary, which is a fabulous part of Europe, particularly for its bird life. And he's running a series of tours, as I'm sure you're all aware, to this wonderful part of the world, with the first tours departing in the spring of this year. So throughout the talk, if you have any questions, please do send us a message. You can either use the chat function or there's also a Q&A. And then towards the end of the evening, I will launch a poll, which will ask you if you're interested in any of the trips. You can receive an itinerary for those. But yeah, please do send in those questions and we will make sure we answer them all at the end of the evening. We'll set a time aside for all of that. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let us know. So for now, I will hand over to Mark. Thanks so much for coming. And I look forward to speaking to you all in a little bit. Please, Mark, show us the wonderful imagery you have in store for us.
Great, thanks very much, Brett, and welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming along. So as Brett said, tonight I'm going to be, well, raving about one of my favourite corners of the world in Hungary. And in fact, one of my favourite trips. They're all my favourite trips. I'm very lucky I just go to places I really want to go, but I always very much look forward to going to Hungary. So this is a place where there's amazing bird life. I mean, just phenomenal bird life, like that virtually nowhere else in Europe. And we have exclusive use of a couple of dozen hides, and they're absolutely amazing, incredible, outstanding hides designed especially for photography. So it's a wonderful way of spending a week surrounded by nature, birds everywhere, bit of other wildlife as well, taking lots of pictures. In an average week there, I reckon I take about 30 to 35,000 pictures. And I'm really careful these days. I don't take too many unless I really, really want to or have to. But it's impossible to resist. Hey, I hope you can hear me. It's actually pelting with rain here. I'm in a garden office in Dorset, and it's so loud on the roof of the office. So I hope you can hear me above that. So there are many different ways of photographing wildlife, of course. Let me just get this started. Hope it's going to work. One is just to wander around and see what you can find. And this is a robin taken in my garden. The garage needs a bit of fixing, and there's a broken window in the side of the garage. And robins nest in there most years, and they fly in and out of the window. So I just stand there and take pictures, and it can be really great. It's a nice way to shoot. If you've got a free hour, go along and do something like that. And in fact, I have to say, subjects like robins often get ignored by people because in competitions, particularly photographic competitions, I've noticed that you get very few common familiar species. And that's what we as judges are always desperate for, because you get loads of things like polar bears and tigers and thousands of them. But a robin, getting a really nice picture of a robin is something people forget to do, and yet it can be really easy. Another way of doing it is just to sit and wait. This is a spirit bear, a wonderful animal in the Great Bear Rainforest in Canada. And I just spent a day sitting by the river where we know they go and fish sometimes. And sure enough, one came along, grabbed a salmon right in front of me. We can go to a particular hot spot. This is on the Falkland Islands, a black-browed albatross, and you know the wildlife's going to be there, and you just shoot what you can from where you can sit. Or, of course, just go on a safari vehicle and or a boat and see what you come across as you travel around an area that you know you're going to see something interesting. This is a blue whale just surfacing underneath the bow of the boat in Baja California. But one of my favorite ways of photographing wildlife is from hides. And of course, there are many different hides and different types of hides around the world. This is in northern Finland. A wolverine, a great hide for wolves sometimes, and particularly for European brown bears. And there are hides like that all over the world, many of them in the UK. I think for me, the man who wins awards for photographing wildlife from hides is this guy. He's a Japanese photographer, Tajishi Fukuda. And I remember meeting him when he used to judge the BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition. Because I'll never forget, he won the mammal section of the competition. And in order to do it, he wanted to photograph a Siberian tiger, which of course very few people get to see, let alone photograph. And he built a hide. And this hide was 3 meters long, 1.5 meters wide, and 1.5 meters deep. And he was in it with a friend. And apparently they stayed in there for 74 days. And he took this amazing picture of a Siberian tiger, a wild Siberian tiger, on day 50. And I remember him telling me that in that 74 days, they decided, he and his friend, they weren't going to utter a word, weren't going to speak, because they thought if they spoke, they'd give the game away. If there were tigers nearby, they might never come close. So they had 74 days with somebody else, not uttering a word. That to me is dedication of shooting from hides. But I think the ultimate way of doing it is to shoot from hides that are designed specifically for wildlife photography. So there's a lot of wonderful bird watching hides in the UK, the RSPB reserves and the Wildfowl and Wetlands Trust and that kind of thing. But they're not necessarily great for photography. And the great thing about using dedicated wildlife photography hides is that, especially if they're designed by somebody who really knows what they're doing and is a photographer themselves, as all these are in Hungary, is that you can control everything. So you're at the right level. So shooting at water level, don't have to lie in the mud. You're shooting comfortably at water level here. You're shooting in the right direction, depending on what you're photographing, into the light or with the light behind you, whatever's preferable. You've got the right background, and so on and so forth. So if it's designed for photography, it's a different league to a regular bird watching hide. And I'll talk about this photograph and where I took this in one of the hides in Hungary in a moment. I'd probably talk this about 30, 35 minutes, just so you can pace yourselves and then leave a bit of time for questions. I've got a lot of pictures here to show you. So I'll talk a little bit, then whiz through pictures, just to give you an idea of what I've taken the last couple of years in these hides in Hungary. So I think these are some of the best, they're certainly some of the best wildlife photography hides in Europe, I'd say in the world, in my experience. Very, very well designed with amazing setups for camera kit and all that kind of thing. And you just almost, I'm going to say almost guaranteed prize-winning front cover photographs. And the great thing about where we go is this corner of Hungary is just strikingly rich in wildlife, bird life particularly. Many species that have been lost or largely lost in the UK. I mean, I can't remember when I last saw a turtle dove down by where I'm in Dorset. If you're in somewhere like East Anglia, I'm sure you see them sometimes. There's a bit of a stronghold there. But I mean, turtle doves have pretty much disappeared from most of the UK. I think we've lost about 97% of our turtle doves since, 10 years ago, in the last decade. We've lost more than any other country in Europe. It's one of our fastest declining birds. But in Hungary, they're doing really well. There's a very healthy population. The last count, there are about 100,000 breeding pairs. And they're avoiding, one of the reasons we're losing our turtle doves is, I think it's something like 1 million of them are being killed every year by sports hunters particularly in France, Spain, and Portugal. And they're sort of bypassing the Hungarian population. So we see turtle doves on a daily basis around the farm, and often many of them. So many species that have sort of disappeared from the UK, but are familiar and fairly common around the hides in Hungary. And then another whole swathe of species, this is a spoonbill, in case you hadn't guessed, that are found in Central Europe that are not really British birds. So you do get spoonbills occurring here sometimes. There's a small breeding population, I think, again, in East Anglia, but around the farm where we stay in Hungary, they're very, very common. You just see them everywhere. So I'm going to talk mostly about birds, but there are loads of other wildlife there as well. Here's just some of them: otter, European ground squirrel, hare, mayfly, roe deer, and European pond terrapin. And there are certain hides for a few of those, and the others are just as a matter of luck. You know, sometimes you just get lucky. I mean, turns up. I missed the shot. I was in a hide photographing birds in a reflecting pool last year, And then suddenly these two pine martens came bounding in, chasing one another, let straight into the pool, right in front of where I was sitting with another guy. I mean, probably about 4 feet away from us. And I had my great big long lens on, and there's no way I could change and sort myself out. They then raced off again, chasing one another off into the woods. They just paused for maybe 5 seconds and they were off. But yeah, all sorts of other stuff turns up as well. So this is where I'm talking about, Hungary. And the place we go to is a place called Puzsatsa, which is, if you see Budapest up at the top there, it's about I mean, Budapest is like a 2.5 hour flight from London, and we'll transfer you from Budapest to the farm where we stay, about a 2 hour drive to the farm. So it's a very easy place to get to, really nice place to go for just a week or so. And the place was set up by a great friend of mine called Bence Máté, who you may well have heard of. If you're into wildlife photography, I'd be surprised if you haven't heard his name on many occasions. He's a Hungarian wildlife photographer. He's the most successful photographer in the history of the BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year competition. And that's how I got to know him. So he's the only person who's won both the Young Wildlife Photographer of the Year grand title and the Adult Wildlife Photographer of the Year grand title, and many, many other competition wins in between. So if you look on his vehicle there, very clever. That's his winning shot called Marvel of Ants from when he won the grand title Wildlife Photographer of the Year in 2010. I was chairing the competition at the time, and was also chairing when he won some of his earlier prizes. I remember the first time I met him was 2005, and he just won the Eric Hosking Award, which was an award for younger photographers under 25 for a portfolio of their best images. And he won it that year. And I remember meeting him and presenting him with the award on stage and chatting to him afterwards. And he was only about 20 at the time. And thinking, God, this lad's really going to go far. There was something about him who was just incredibly inspired and inspiring, had fantastic ideas, worked incredibly hard at his photography. And so we sort of kept in touch and we became great friends over the years. And you see that corner photo, David Attenborough with his book, which I wrote the forward in, called The Invisible Photographer. And that title sort of says it all, because the way Bence works is from hides. And that's what we get to do. We get to go and make the most of the hides that he's built to take many of these prize-winning pictures. So that's his competition-winning shot, Marvel of Ants. That wasn't from a hide, ironically. But you probably recognise that. And here are a few of his other awards. He's won many wildlife photography competitions around the world. This is just a sort of taster, give you an idea of how many he has won. He's an incredible photographer, and you'll recognise a lot of his photographs, I'm sure. These are all by Bence from when he was in his sort of late teens through to more recently. And all of those were taken from the hides that we use in Hungary. I think what makes Bence stand out from many other photographers is he has a great eye for detail. He's very creative. He preconceives photographs and comes up with what he wants to achieve. And then he has the technical know-how to make that happen. He's not a normal photographer who just wanders around or drives about or goes off in a boat and sees what turns up. He works at a picture until he gets it, which is why his hides are so fantastic. You know, he's got a string of, I think it's 4 cameras there, all shooting at once with different lenses, different settings, so that if something interesting happens in front of the hide, he'll nail it. Here's an example before I move on to the hides themselves. So he told me this story. He went off to Greece to photograph Dalmatian pelicans. This was the first year. I won't go into all that. You can just see that it's a complicated setup. Most people go to Greece to photograph Dalmatian pelicans and they just shoot them with a camera normally from the shore, from a boat, and that's it. That's not how Bence works. So he found in that first year that the water was too murky. He wanted half in and half out, pelicans above the water and below the water. And so he went back the following year and he took with him basically a huge tank, a water purification system, so that he could clean the water and basically end up with this big tank full of clean water. And then the fishermen he got them to sort out their catch, which is what they do, and the discarded fish got thrown into the tank, and the pelicans came. And apparently I think it took 22 hours to fill the tank with clear water so you could actually see under the surface. And before it all got mucky again with the pelicans in the water, with the tank with the sides sort of just below the surface, you had 15 minutes of shooting time. But with all that set up and with several people helping him, he got shots like this, which no one else was getting. This is what's so fantastic. No one else gets shots like that. And he got the idea, he imagined how the shot would look, took goodness knows how many tens of thousands of pictures and got what he wanted. And he's basically transferred that kind of thinking to Hungary. And in this little corner of Hungary where he bought a farm and he's been rewilding the farm. It was very damaged farmland when he got it. He's been adding more land to it. It's surrounded by a national park now, which is fantastic. And he's been planting hedgerows and trees and what have you, building waterways and dams. I mean, there's thousands of nest boxes. That tree's got like 5 or 6 nest boxes. Just notice there's a red-footed falcon sitting, you might not see it, sitting on the left-hand side of that tree. So it's become, over the years, he started this in 2005, and over the years, it's become an absolute haven for wildlife. I mean, I noticed driving around southern England, you just don't see birds that often. There aren't that many birds about anymore. We've lost 2/3 of them. But there, wherever you go, as soon as you walk outside, there's birds calling, the air's full of birds, just like, I mean, it's a bit like I remember the UK was when I was growing up, 50 years ago when I was a kid. It's just a very rich place to be. And one of the things I love about being there is just being completely surrounded by nature all the time. And so what he's done to fund all of this and to fund his photography, he's built these hides, he's taken his prize-winning pictures from the hides, and now he lets other people use them. And so we take over the whole place for a week. We've got exclusive use of all these amazing hides. Most of them take 2 people, some take 1 or 3. And they're not just like your regular, garden shed hide that we sort of used to in the UK. I mean, this is a tree hide. They're on stilts, built in the treetops. There are other ones that are underwater, ones that are underground. They've got comfy chairs. Some of them have got Wi-Fi, so you're waiting for something to happen. You can catch up with your emails, whatever you want to do. Got power, and some of them are even soundproof. So you can sit in the hide and chat away. When you hear that rain, it's just amazing. You can chat away and the wildlife won't hear you at all. And they're all designed with wildlife photographers in mind. So shooting at the right levels with the right background. So if you're shooting from that high to those stalks, there'll be a beautiful green background one way and a beautiful brown background another way, and so on. You just move at literally a few feet. Some of the hides are so high tech. I mean, this is in one of the hides where we photograph otters and in the winter bittern and water rail and that kind of thing. You can actually adjust the artificial lighting, and the wildlife's all used to it. So say you want backlit, you just press the backlit button and it'll gradually come up. Nothing ever takes any notice. And then when the otter comes up, I'll show you some pictures in a minute, and shapes, you've got all this backlit, all the droplets backlit and the fur backlit. Or you might want something a bit more like a sunrise or a sunset, so you increase the level of yellow light and so on. You can see you've got floor heating, you've got window defogging. It's just another world altogether, and you can just control all that yourself, do exactly what you want to do. I think of Bence as the sort of inventor of hides, and he wasn't, of course, and he took them to a whole different level. I mean, wildlife photographers have been using hides for 120 years or so. The people who really sort of started using them were the Kearton brothers in the late 1800s. And they were using a whole mix of different hides, simple tents and so on. And they were really quite ingenious for the time in trying to get close to the wildlife they were photographing and get close views. I think the funniest they ever did was this. They got a dead bullock and they sent it off to a taxidermist. And basically the taxidermist hollowed it out and hardened it, don't know all the details. And they used that as a hide. So here's the bullock as a hide. And one of the Kearton brothers would be sitting inside this bullock. Because they thought in those days when they first started, it had to look like something natural that the wildlife would be used to. Didn't realize you could just sit in a tent and they'd get used to it over time. I don't know where they were looking out, where they put their lens. I don't like to think about that. But they spent many, many hours in this bullet, getting terrible backache and so on. Had a few accidents. This is Richard Kearton. You can see his legs sticking up through the bottom with the bullock's legs. He got so hot and dizzy, he actually moved to one side and the whole bullock rolled upside down. So that was the early days of hide. So one of the things Bence has done that I think changes everything in terms of wildlife photography from hides is he designed this one-way glass system. So you can sit in the side inside the hide, and the wildlife's on the other side. It can't see you, but you can see it. And the glass is very expensive, and it's been designed very carefully by Bence. It's been copied, of course, around the world now. Other people are using it, but he's the one who developed the system. You lose a tiny bit of light, but you don't lose any sharpness at all. And this is where he came up with the title of his book, The Invisible Wildlife Photographer. You know, he's there in the hide with the wildlife just outside. As far as they're concerned, he's invisible. If you're interested in finding out more, by the way, I did a video interview with Bence for this BBC Wildlife Photography Masterclass I did during lockdown. And I interviewed him about his work as a wildlife photographer and about all the hides and how he works and how he thinks and designs the photographs in his head and all the rest of it I've been talking about. So if you're interested, have a look at that. It's just look up that online and you'll find the video. So let me introduce you to a few of the hides. I won't go through all of them. There's 24 altogether. I'll just give you an idea of what they're like. So a bit of a taster, and I'll show you some of my pictures from the hides from the last couple of years, just to show you what's possible. So this is a hide that's designed for swallows and European ground squirrels. Very simple hide compared with all of the others. You sit in the hide there, the squirrels come out on the grassy lawn, and there's a sort of runway, a water runway, you can just see in front of the reeds there, that the swallows come down and drink from. There's also mud alongside the runway, and they come and collect mud. But the clever thing about this for the ground squirrels and swallows is that the backdrop, which I didn't take a photograph of for some reason, is just a grassy bank a long way away. So it's a beautiful colour wash. You don't get anything disturbing the images at all. And let me just show you a few of the pictures. So again, you know, we don't see many swallows here even, but there are loads of swallows there. They just fill the sky. It's absolutely wonderful. And this is the muddy little bank alongside the water runway. So you sit in the hide, comfortable chair, of course, shooting through the one-way glass, camera on a tripod at the level of the mud. And when the swallows come down, you just fire away. And you've got that lovely backdrop, easy to blur out of focus. It's just amazing what you can get. The real challenge and the fun bit of it all, of course, you want to get those in the bag, but is getting the swallows drinking water. And that's a lot harder than it looks. It's a lot of fun. What I generally do is I watch what they're doing on a particular day, and they will often come down and drink from pretty much the same spot. So I'll focus on that spot, keep it on manual focus, and then the camera, I've got the remote control, and as I see the swallow come down, start shooting, I mean, fastest number of frames per second I can, and hope that one of them is sharp as it comes into the frame. I mean, if you've got something like pre-capture, like on an Olympus, I know some other cameras have got that as well these days, that's another way to do it, so you can just capture them before you react. I quite like these sort of shots as well. They'll sometimes come down, take a drink and turn around, get one swimming off in flying off into the distance. There's two that happen to be at the same plane at the same time, one going to drink the other way around and the other one just having taken a drink. And there's other stuff that comes down to drink there as well. Pied wagtail and you know, a dozen other species will come down and drink from the same hide. You might get a few surprises as well. This is a marsh frog that just appeared on the mud, and a surprise, unexpected visitor there just coming in as well. The ground squirrels will come and drink from the swallow feeding pool. There's another ground squirrel hide actually, just a few minutes walk away. So this hide's like 30 seconds walk from where we stay. You can go and use that anytime you like. just for half an hour or a day, whatever you want to do. And there's another one about a minute's walk away that's facing the other way for shooting the ground squirrels into the sun at the end of the day. So they'll often sort of squabble and fight and leap up. And that one's got a sandy front, and they leap up, and then all the sand blows up into the air. And against the sun, that looks fantastic. So the way Bence introduced these, he actually went to Budapest airport, and he had heard that they were going to be getting rid of all their ground squirrels. So they were becoming a bit of a risk for all the planes for understandable reasons. And he went there, persuaded them to let him do this. They closed the airport for a bit, and Bence then collected 150, which is pretty much all the ground squirrels there, and rescued them and brought them back to his farm down on the border near Serbia. And the colony's been thriving ever since. So there's ground squirrels everywhere. We have lunch out in the open by where we stay on the farm, and there's ground squirrels just running around our feet all the time. And this is one of the biggest colonies in Europe now. It's doing really, really well. They've been declining in most parts of Europe. There's reintroduction programs in some countries. Poland is one, for example, but they're doing particularly well on Bence's farm. So these are taken out over the grassy lawn in front of the hide. And again, different times of day, you can get different colours. And that's just shooting slightly different angle where there's a more browny bank behind, which I quite like, with the brown and the colour of the squirrel looks quite nice. Just show a couple more, all taken from that little hide. So one of my favourite hides is the theatre hide, which is fantastic for water birds. And it's a bit like sort of NASA. You sit in a very comfortable chair, and we can take 3 people in a theatre hide. And you have this amazing contraption. So you can have 2 cameras with different lenses, and they swivel about. So you can move around and change lens really quickly, shoot whatever's happening, whether it's close or far away. There's another look at it, the 2 cameras with the 2 different lenses. It's a fantastic setup. You can sit there for hours on end. And this is out one side. You can look out the back as well, and see what's going on the other side. We tend to get more spoonbills and buzzards and white-tailed sea eagles in the winter and other stuff. You can see how many birds there are and how close they are. And again, the backdrop is really thought through. So that reed, it's an artificial reed backdrop. You can shoot all sorts of stuff. Black storks are very common there. And again, shooting at water level from the comfort of the chair. I'll whiz through a few of these just to give you an idea. White storks as well. There are European white storks everywhere. I mean, they're in the local village near the farm. They actually have artificial nest sites, and the white storks are nesting on the top of all these poles all through the village. It's just wonderful. They're really doing very well in that area. And a whole load of other different egrets and herons, black-crowned night heron there. I've mentioned spoonbills a couple of times. They're very common, great birds to photograph. Really nice to try and do different sort of shots, as I'll show you in a minute. One of the great things about this is you get loads of time. So as I'll explain in a minute, every day or every half a day, we decide who wants to go where and how long you want to spend there. And if you want to spend a whole night here, for example, you can. So you're there for first light in the morning, or you want to shoot in the middle of the night, you're welcome to. If you want to start shooting at 4 in the morning and leave the farm then, that's fine. If you want to lie in, that's fine. But whatever you do, you get loads of time to experiment, watch the behavior, get the different shots, wait for the great light, at the beginning or end of the day. And if you put the hours in, you can shoot one species all day and come up with dozens, if not hundreds, of completely different shots. And it's a really nice way to hone your skills. So I think this is a great week for, professional wildlife photographers who know what they're doing, just want loads of amazing opportunities, and for beginners. So we work together, we talk about what we're doing, what settings we're using, how we're shooting, what we're going to try and do, what we're going to try and achieve. We look at one another's pictures, analyze how we're doing, and basically just develop during the course of the week and learn along the way. And you can do all this sort of practice focusing on the foot instead of the beak and all that kind of thing. And the settings are so good that even common species like mallard, photographing mallard in the UK, generally you've got to be lying down in the mud next to the lake. or the river to get that sort of angle. But this is shot from that same hide from a comfy chair, just shooting at water level, and a black-headed gull. Loads of different species come in. There's a cormorant. We also get pygmy cormorants sometimes. As I say, if you wait there, go back, maybe if you don't want to do the whole day, you might do a morning one day, afternoon another day, get different light, different conditions, see different behavior. It's good fun because with three of us in that hide, you know, you might be focusing on one thing, and then you suddenly hear somebody else's camera going, and you look over and you're missing some other exciting behavior over, you know, just out of your camera shot. There's always something exciting going on. It is really, really good fun. And it's great fun working together, and you know, we can be sitting next to one another in the same hide and still come back with different photographs. Now, this one you can stay overnight. There are actually some beds at the back of the hide. So there are 3 bedrooms, and then you walk through the sort of lounge area of the little house, down some steps, walk, sort of crouch along a tunnel, underground tunnel. It's all lit up, but it's all enclosed. And then you come out inside the hide. And at night, all the herons and egrets and cormorants are still there. And you can basically light them from the back. They're all completely used to it. And then you can get some really, really different shots. And I love doing this. So it's really worth spending a night or two just photographing this kind of picture. You can imagine that every time one of them moves, something different happens. You get a different shot. Sometimes there'll be lots of them, sometimes just 1 or 2, as this sort of illustrates. And again, we talk about exposure and how you get this, how you get the rim light, how you get the silhouette, how you get the most of the splash and the spray. And we'll adjust the lighting accordingly. If it's working or not working, we can change it to suit what we want to do. So these are all taken basically in one night, just to illustrate what's possible in that theatre hide. Then there are loads of other hides. There are a bee-eater hide. This is one of Bence's shots. He put it together in Photoshop just to show what it's like. There's a big bee-eater colony, 2 hides, a bit more traditional, sort of simpler wooden hides, but still with that one-way glass. And with a fan and everything, it gets pretty hot in there in the height of the summer, with amazing opportunities for photographing these bee-eaters coming and going. And there are wonderful perches in front of the hives. We can change the perches anytime we want. Another example of where pro capture would be useful. I just focus on the branch with manual focus and wait. And as soon as something's coming in, just start firing. It's the luck of the draw whether they're in the right focus plane or not. But it's really, really good fun. So many different possibilities. And if we don't like the perches, or we get bored with the perches, we've got enough pictures on a particular perch, we can change them. Anything's possible. You don't have to go with what's already there. And then the 2 hides are facing different directions. So we'll swap around a bit, shoot with the sun behind us, shoot with the sun in front of us, and get different sort of angles. It's great fun trying to get all sorts of different species of prey. They come in with a myriad different insects, and lots of different dragonflies and bees, of course, and all sorts of other things. It's never a dull moment in those hides. And then we've got the drinking stations. This again is one of Bence's shots put together to show what it's like. And there are several different drinking stations, or reflecting pools, as you might call them. Again, we use them mostly in the daytime. In the winter, particularly, sometimes in the spring, we use them at night as well. We get visits by deer, and can be really effective. Again, they're completely used to the light. So we're doing a similar thing to the herons and the cormorants. Backlighting them in a cold winter's night is wonderful. And the hide's heated, of course, so we don't get cold. It's all very comfortable and luxurious. This is one of the drinking stations that we generally use for birds during the day. Some are much smaller, maybe just 1 person inside there. And again, very distant backdrop is a different one. And a whole range of different species coming in. And you can change it as you see fit. If you just want the bird at the end, so right at the end of there, that's this shot, that's a sparrowhawk. We get goshawks coming in as well. Or you might want perches over the top. You might want something in the middle, for example, on a little rock or a piece of wood surrounded by water. Whatever you want, you can do. And we spend a lot of fun time looking for interesting perches and interesting places for the birds to land on. They come in and bathe and drink, of course. If you don't, that sort of works because of all the spraying. If you wait too long when a bird comes in, like this great tip, once it's done that, it's going to look really bedraggled. You've got to be very quick, get them when they first come in, or get them bedraggled with all the spray. So we put that little perch there, especially to try and attract things. That's a male black cat. Lots of long-tailed tits, slightly different subspecies to ours. That's cordata, much whiter head to our long-tailed tits. They're pretty common everywhere, nesting everywhere. That was, in fact, very close to the farm where we stay. And we'll do all sorts of different styles of photography, try and get them taking off, get really tight close-ups, using different lenses, different techniques, and that kind of thing. And just experimenting. One of the great things I say is you can experiment and try different things because you know there'll be something else there within a few minutes or a few seconds. And some species that say that not so common in the UK anymore, tree sparrows, loads of buzzards here, but just great variety. There's also another hide called a cinema hide, the cinema hide, which is about a 10-minute walk from the hide, from the farm, from where we stay. Notice the otter there in the picture. This is great for otters, and they're used to different light, flood lighting, backlighting, sunset lighting, sunrise lighting, whatever you want. And again, you go down some steps, so you're more largely submerged underwater, and it's all soundproofed. So you can chat. You don't want to chat in a loud voice, but you can chat and say, "Oh, there's one," or "That one's doing this," and the otters won't be bothered at all. And again, not many places in the world you can photograph European otters like this, wild otters in such wonderful conditions and at water level. Again, these were all taken in one night, just to give you an idea. I don't want to make it look like I've done these over years and years. But, you know, you get all these opportunities in one session. Obviously, sometimes you don't get it, but that's wildlife. But when they're there, when it works, it's absolutely stunning. You see what I mean by the backlightings? There's a bit of yellow light I've done on that NASA style settings box and backlit so you can get all the spray. And then again, this hide's fantastic in the daytime. It's a more enclosed hide, so you get a lot of herons, grey herons coming in, and egrets and cormorants and that kind of thing. Great opportunities for a whole range of different photographs. The great white egret. And plenty of time to experiment. Which one do I focus on? What does it look like if they're all in focus? If the one nearest the camera is in focus, and so on. Lots of time to experiment. Bit of backlighting makes it a bit more interesting. In the winter, we get bitterns. One of the best places I've ever come across for photographing bitterns. This is with a bit of artificial lighting because it's quite dull when it came out in the middle of the winter. And likewise, as well as bitterns, we get water rails. And anything's great to photograph in those conditions, just a moorhen, for example. There's obviously a kingfisher hide. There are kingfisher hides all over the place, I know. And this is better in the winter, I have to say. They feed much more often in the winter, but they're also there all year round. So, you know, if you're a bit more patient, you don't get them coming in every minute, get them coming in every sort of 10 minutes or so. But wonderful opportunities with a very distant backdrop that obviously changes with the light. And this again is 15 minutes walk from the farm. So people sometimes say, oh, actually, I fancy just doing kingfishers for a few hours. And the sort of thing you can do in the middle of the day. You don't need the particularly good light. You don't need end of day or beginning of day light necessarily. And then a whole load of other stuff, which I won't go through all the hides. There's 6 different hides for hoopoes. There's another 5 hides for European rollers. And then a lot of the hides are designed for particular species, but other species will come along. So this is from that first hide I showed you with all the storks and the herons and egrets and spoonbills. There's a marsh harrier. This is from the tree hide, which is great for golden oriole, collared doves, kestrels, whole range of different stuff. This is one of the poo hides, northern wheatear, a female black woodpecker. They're pretty common, often come down to the drinking stations, and stuff that's more familiar to us as well. So that gives you a sort of idea of what the possibilities are. And as I say, because we're in the hides, we've just got the whole place to ourselves. There's only a small group, 9 people, including myself. There's just loads of opportunity, long hours of photography, if that's what you want to do, to experiment and do something different, learn different techniques, talk about composition. Over lunch and dinner, we will often look at photographs, and I'll show what I've been taking. People show ones they're happy with. And it's really inspiring to see what different people get. And all this other stuff along the way. If you just go wandering, and you can wander anywhere on the farm. There's a river right next door that had mayflies hatching last year. These were all taken, I'm going to show you now, in one session. This is actually a hoopoo hide, but some other interesting stuff turned up, and I just really like that backdrop. And this is a great hide for photographing hares as well. From just, I mean, this is like 15 feet away. And again, with that wonderful backdrop. So just to finish off then very quickly, the way it works is we stay on the farm. There's various types of accommodation. There's wildlife everywhere. That's the tree hide. That's one of the houses that we stay in. There's swallows nesting in the porches everywhere. There's cuckoos calling all day long. There's golden orioles calling all day long. At supper at night, there's 5 species of owl calling. There's bats everywhere. It really is just wonderful. The accommodation is mixed. In the place in the top there, it's all mostly private facilities and very smart. And there's a couple of places in the house, a couple of rooms you share, bathroom, and so on. It's all on a first come, first served basis. But my view of these things is that you don't need posh accommodation. It's very nice accommodation. It's very clean and the food's good and everything. But we spend maximum time in the hides. When we're not in the hides, we're shattered. We're sleeping or downloading photographs or looking at photographs. And we generally do that together. So, the accommodation is by the by. It's perfectly clean and comfortable. And the way we do it, we have the list of all the different hides. There's 24 hides there. Everyone has a different color. And every morning and then every lunchtime, every lunchtime and then every evening, we work out who's going to go where, who'd like to do what. And some of them you have to be driven. Many you can just walk to, some are a little drive away. And there are 3 wonderful guides, Chubba, Fanny, and Coco, who know the place inside out, know what's happening in which hide, everything you possibly need, help us enormously. And then we just fill the time doing that. As I say, it's open to beginners and experienced photographers. One thing I would say is you will take a lot of pictures, and I'm pretty sure that you'll come back with a lot of really stunning shots. It would be very, very hard to get anywhere else, certainly anywhere else that I've been to. So we do have a few, we actually had a couple of cancellations. So we've got 1 place each on the 2 leaving this year in end of April and early May. That's just a few other trips that I'm doing with Wildlife Worldwide, Galapagos, Scotland to Svalbard, South Georgia and the Falklands, and next one's Baja. Again, we've got a couple of cabins free in Baja with a couple of cancellations. So anyone interested, be great if you came along. Okay, well, I talked for longer than 35 minutes, sorry, but hope that's all right. I'll just do this slide, and hopefully Brett is still awake, and he will appear.
I am
Great.
still
Thank
here.
you very much. Thanks, Brett.
Thank you so much, Mark. That was really inspirational. And I mean, as you sort of said, the hides are probably the best in the world. I've known Bence Máté's work for years, and he's built an incredible reputation for the quality of his hides and obviously the imagery as a result. So yeah, thank you so much for that. That's really fantastic. If anybody has any questions, please do send them through. You can either send them through the Q&A or the chat function. I'm just going to launch a poll now. So if you're interested in any of the holidays that Mark just spoke about, then you can actually sort of select which ones you're interested in, and they will be available for you later on. So yeah, just let us know if that's of interest. So yeah, we have a couple of questions already, but I'm sure more will follow, Mark. But so one of the first ones, and I think this is quite a good one because I know there's often questions about shooting through glass. It's from Alan. So thank you, Alan. Is he's aware that if you shoot through one-way glass at an angle other than 90 degrees, the image may be degraded. Looking at your images, this is not something that seems to have affected you. Is that the case, basically?
Yes, hi Alan. Yeah, that is the case actually. I mean, you're right. Many places I've been, you got to just shoot straight through it, otherwise it's hopeless. But here, there's a limit. If you're shooting right along the length of the glass, it obviously doesn't work. But you can shoot at least a 90-degree angle without, without having any problem at all. It's all tack sharp. So the glass is Bence did tell me how much it costs per hide. I can't remember. It's very, very expensive quality glass for that reason. Otherwise, it's incredibly frustrating if you've got something over here and you can't shoot at that angle. You can.
Yeah. Well, that's very good to know. I know that is a concern with lots of people, so that's fantastic. Alan also asked, when do you sleep? But I think you answered that. You don't really, and when you can, you do. So that sort of
I
answers that.
don't. I don't sleep much. It's funny, really. I think I've had people come on the trip and they say, well, I want to not do too long days, and would like to sort of have a bit of a later start. And by day two, they think, actually, I want to go at 4 in the morning because the light's wonderful and the opportunities there. You don't want to be going to breakfast having had a lie in and meet people who say, "Oh my God, you can't believe what happened this morning." So yeah, if you want to do long hours, then it's absolutely fine. I mean, I tend to like to do long hours just to like to make the most of it. But as I say, if you're getting tired and you want to have a lie-in, it's completely fine. Or if you want to miss half a day, a session, and just wander around the farm photographing the ground squirrels or something else. I mean, what people do if they're feeling tired is maybe instead of going off somewhere for a proper session where you get taken into the hide and left there, is just do one of the hides very close by and do a couple of hours or an hour and then have a kip and then see what's happening and go somewhere else. So it's very flexible. I think you'd probably find you'll be tempted not to risk missing anything.
I think that's always the way with these trips, isn't it? You don't want to miss out. So maximize the time you have there. That's why you're there. I think that was my philosophy anyway. A quick question. Someone's asked about other opportunities of smaller things outside of the hide, sort of macro work. Is that a possibility? Just as a...
Yeah, there's a lot of it's a very rich place for butterflies and moths. And a lot of people do that. If you came, it would definitely be worth bringing a macro lens. And as I say, you're very welcome to wander anywhere. Along the side of the river can be really productive. You can just walk there from the farm. And if anything particularly interesting turns up, we'll be told about it and be taken to see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are, and there's lizards and things like that, frogs and so on. So yeah, if you're into the macro stuff, it's not designed for that. They're there ad hoc.
Sort of a
But it's
bonus.
so rich in wildlife, there's a lot there. So you'd definitely get something out of that for sure.
Cool. Excellent. And probably one of the most important questions that a few people have asked, what lenses should they take?
Well, one thing I learned very early on is not a very long lens because actually the wildlife is very close. So my favorite lens is 300 mm with a
Yeah.
full frame sensor. And a lot of this stuff is close enough to get nice close portraits. But again, you set it all up depending on what lens you're using. So if you want to do portraits, you set it up so they're perching at the right distance. But if you want to have them taking off in flight, so what we sometimes do is say, right, who's interested in an afternoon doing flight shots? And we'll go to a particular hide, we'll set it up in such a way that when they take off, we've got space in the lens, to get them flying out of the frame. Hopefully not out of the frame, but flying within the frame. So 300 is great for that. So I would say I sometimes use, you know, wide angle lenses. They're 3 inches away from where we're sitting, and you can get some interesting shots like that. Anything from that to 300 or so. If you want to bring a longer lens, then you're very welcome to. There are things like red-footed falcons that we tend not to see from the hides, but you can see just wandering around very close to the farm. And if you want really tight portraits, maybe a longer lens, but 300 will serve you very, very well indeed for almost everything we're doing.
Okay, that's great. So there's a few more questions, which I think are all quite applicable. And then there's some others that if we have time, we can get back to. Sue has asked whether the height of the chairs is adjustable in the hides, and I know that is a problem for lots of people in hides. So
Yes.
there you go.
And there's cushions if you're short, and drop them right down if you're tall. Yeah, it's been very well thought through. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll suit all heights.
Okay, that's excellent. And another very apt question is, are the camera mounts provided in the hides, or do we need to bring tripods, etc.?
I bring everything we need.
Okay, that's fine.
So what you need is I'll bring Arca Swiss plates and stuff like that, and then
Okay.
they just go into um, in most hides they have a setup, so you just slot it in and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
But you will need to bring a tripod as well for some of the other hides, some of the hoopoo and roller hides. So we'll obviously advise on all of that. As I say, it'll be a mix of setups where, for example, I showed you the one where you have the two cameras side by side, different lenses, that's all rigged up, ready to go. And some of the others you'll be using your own tripod.
Okay.
So the Swiss Arca plates and so on I'll be bringing, and then they'll provide the rest there.
Okay. So worth bringing a tripod, but for the other
Yeah,
plates, don't
yeah,
worry.
but you use it about half the time.
Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. In regards to lighting, do you need a flash gun in any of the hides?
No,
I would assume
not
they've
at
got it all
all.
set up.
They're not keen on using flash where they haven't got artificial lighting. Where it's needed, we've got floodlights anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
So otherwise, we're shooting with natural light.
Good. Uh, Makes it very clear.
One thing
Uh,
I would bring is a remote control. A lot of the stuff we're doing is setting up, focusing on a particular point and waiting, and then firing when anything happens. So again, we'll advise on all of that. But that's one gadget that would be good to bring.
that's good to know. So now some sort of slightly not left field, but slightly different questions. Someone has asked whether they would be able to bring and use a bridge camera in the hides.
Yeah, absolutely, no
Yeah,
problem. People do that a lot.
there you go.
Yeah, you don't need you're not missing anything. You've got the
Yeah,
generally with bridge cameras, you've got a good range of zoom, so you can certainly
particularly the
get
Sony's.
now. Yeah, exactly. And we can fix it to the settings in the hides. Again, you'd need a tripod for some of the hides, but no
Yeah.
problem bringing a bridge camera at all.
Um, okay, another question I saw earlier, and there's sort of two that sort of go together here. One was, do you have exclusive use of the property, which I believe you do?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, so that
Nobody
answers.
else will be there at all, just us.
Okay,
And
perfect.
Spencer and his guides, but
Well,
just us doing the
yeah.
photography.
And then Dave has asked, he's obviously very keen, has asked whether it would be possible to stay on longer than just a week.
No, basically, and understandably, that what he does is only groups
Okay.
with a leader. So instead of taking individual bookings, which
He
I think
gets booked ahead
decided
as
some
well.
years ago is too complicated, so you have to go as part of an organised group.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. It makes it very clear. And then Elspeth has asked quite a specific question
Oh, I
about,
know Elspeth. Hello, Elspeth.
I know you know Elspeth, who has asked what the red bird was in the Kingfisher hide shot. I didn't see that one, so I can't answer.
Um, I don't remember that either.
Might have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I'll have a look, Elspeth. You tried to catch me out, Elspeth. I don't remember a red bird in the kingfisher hide. I'll have a look, see what you've spotted.
But that's all of the questions. I think if I've missed any, I'm sorry. I think I've answered all of them. The poll has been sort of successfully filled in, so thank you so much, everybody, for filling that in.
Great.
Obviously, a big thanks to Mark for his time. He's a very busy man, so having him come along is a fantastic thing.
Well, I love raving about Hungary. It's a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, no, you're most welcome. Thank you. And your photography was fantastic, and obviously just showing the hides and the sort of the locality of everything was fantastic. So thank you for that.
I hope it was helpful for anyone interested.
Um, Mark, can you just go to the last slide quickly, just so that people one last time can see there's an offer available. So if you book your offer after this talk, please use that code that is currently on screen. It should be sent to you as well. But yeah, so please do, if you're interested in booking, use that code. And yeah, thank you so much. We've got a couple of talks next week. One of them is with Mark again, which is actually the second one on the 27th, which is actually, well, that's 10 days, I think, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Nick Garbett is on the 22nd. So please do join us for those. And yeah, we very much look forward to having you. And thank you again, Mark, for your time. It was a real pleasure to have you along. And
Thanks, Brett, and thank you everybody for coming along.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
exactly. Thank you all for your time. And we very much look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye bye.